Hi guys! So today I come to you from my living room floor and I want to talk about your first annual committee meeting. So I had my first annual committee meeting about 2 weeks ago and it went really well, surprisingly well, and I want to give you all of the tips and tricks that really helped me and worked for me throughout this process. And while I do that, I'm going to get ready. So in front of me I have already put on moisturizer, I put on sunscreen, and eye cream, and that's all I've done so far. Currently, I'm going into my 4th year of the molecular and cellular biology program at my school. And what you do is every single year you're required to update your committee of all the progress you've done in the past year, and they give you feedback. About a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I did my dissertation proposal exam, and that's when you go in front of your committee and you tell them about your project and you talk about like your goals and what you're going to do, and they say, yes, this seems feasible, go ahead, we love it, or like these are the things that you need to like work on before you can really start your project. So I did that, I passed, and then now we are a year later and you have to update your committee on what you've done in the past year. I want you to start 2 months before you want to actually have your committee meeting. The advice that I was given is that you want to do it about a year after your dissertation proposal so that you have enough data to show your committee. So what I did is 2 months prior to the day or the week that I wanted to do my committee meeting, I sent out a when to meet. So when to meet is just a website that you can send out links to whoever, and they tell you the times and the dates that they're available. So I gave them 5 days, Monday through Friday. So I picked the week that I wanted to do my committee meeting, and then I gave them the choice of day and time in that week, and I picked the day and time that everybody was available for this meeting, and that ended up being Tuesday, 2 to 4 p.m. So you want to allow about 2 hours for your committee meeting. It can go a little bit less, it could go a little bit longer, but from what I've heard, about 2 hours is what you want to shoot for. And I did that 2 months before the actual meeting. So about a month and a half before the meeting, I set the date. So I got everybody's responses, I picked the time that I thought would be best, and then I set the date. I sent it a Google Calendar reminder for everybody, and we move on from there. Now, I didn't really do anything else for another month. I just continued my research. I continued what I was doing, knowing that I have my committee meeting 2 months from now. Now, a month before, so now we're a month before the committee meeting, I need you to start now. Ideally, you'll continue reading maybe a paper a week, maybe a little bit more than that, and keep up on your topics so that you have like all of the necessary information to really understand your project. A big part of this is like keeping up with research that's in your field. But I didn't start putting together my presentation until about a month before. So I have done group meetings and like student seminars and stuff like that. So I've presented my data in other forums, let's say. So I've had bases of a presentation. Like I know my background, I know my data slides, like I've presented them a couple of times. So I had something that I could build onto. But if you don't have a presentation that you can build onto, you should start about a month before the actual committee meeting. You really don't want to put that off. And I say that because you should make your first draft a month before. It doesn't have to be extensive at all. You should have maybe an outline, your data images, even if they're not labeled, just have them on the slides and send it to your PI and say, I would like some feedback. Send your outline to your PI and allow them a couple of days before they send it back. So what I did was I took an outline I had from previous presentations, I tweaked it a bit because of all of the new things that I've done, and I sent it to my PI, and I gave him, my PI is a him, a couple of days before he sent it back to me with tons of revisions. Like, expect tons of revisions. It's normal. It's so normal. You want that. This is cold brew. We got a little like cold brew maker, and it's amazing. I highly recommend it. So I'm gonna use this little guy. So now we're about 3 weeks before your committee meeting, and you already have your presentation started. You have the outline, and your PI is working on it to give you feedback. Now, what I did was, at this point, 3 weeks prior, I went through my lab notebooks and went through each page and made a detailed summary of everything that I've done in the past year, everything that I've already shown my committee that I can do in my dissertation proposal exam, and then all of the new things that I've done since, including all of the troubleshooting, everything that went wrong, which is going to be like majority of your pages at this point, like a year after your dissertation proposal. Like, expect that, you know, you're not going to have a crazy amount of data, especially like if you're in the life sciences like me. It's really, it takes a while to get really good data. So don't feel like you need a certain amount. That's not what this committee meeting is about. They're not grading you. They're there to help you. So I'm 3 weeks out, and I'm going through my lab notebook, very detailed, taking notes on everything that I've done. I'm taking notes, I'm putting little sticky notes on each page that I think are really important that I might want to go back to later. Then at that point, my PI sends back my presentation, and he changes a ton of stuff. He gives me tons of suggestions. I have to basically rework my whole thing, but that's good. That's good. It really makes you rethink the storyline of your project. Like, why are we doing this? Why is it important? Why do they care? And then also, what have you done? Why have you done it? And is this enough? You know what I mean? So at that point, work on your presentation, make sure everything's there, make sure it's a cohesive storyline, and just kind of keep working at that. Read about a paper or two a week to keep up with new research. So there's going to be new things that happened in the past year, or things that you didn't know was relevant in your dissertation proposal that are more relevant now, and you want to read up on them. Take the time to do that. Okay, so now we're about 2 weeks from your committee meeting, and you should just be focusing. I mean, you could do research and like still be in lab and stuff like that, obviously, but you should be focusing on your presentation. Build it up, make sure it makes sense, and then really highlight the research you've accomplished in the past year. And don't forget to add the things that you may be struggling with. So for me, I'm struggling with a certain purification step, and you want to add that because you want their feedback. This is not a presentation that you're giving to just tell them what your research is about. They know what your research is about. Okay? They already know what your research is about. They may need some like reminders and some details, but you're not giving them just an overview of your project. You want to give them the nitty-gritty of your data and ask, what do you think? And you got to be really open to feedback. And it sounds scary, but I promise you, it's not as scary as a lot of other meetings. It's not as scary as your proposal. It's not an exam. You're not getting graded. I want to really impress that upon you. You're not getting graded. 2 weeks out, I'm working. I'm doing my presentation. I'm making sure all my data looks good. I am labeling all of my data, making sure that everything is there and that I can get my story out within 2 hours. A week before my committee meeting, I give a practice presentation to my my colleagues. So we get into one of the conference rooms right by our lab, and I give a practice presentation. And I wasn't ready for it. It's okay. You don't need like a storyline. You don't need to like practice at this point. You just want to tell them what you're going to tell your committee, and they're going to give you feedback. And hopefully you can do this. I might just be very lucky in that my PI allots a lot of time for us to give each other feedback, which is so, so, so important. And that's why I picked my lab. He gives a ton of feedback and he keeps a smaller lab. And that's something that I really like. Sorry. A week before, I give a practice presentation and I audio record the entire thing. It was like 2.5 hours long, and I audio record it. I get a ton of feedback from the people that know my project best. And then after that, I take the audio recording and dictate all of the notes. I dictate all of the notes, everything my PI said, all of the points that my colleagues may have mentioned, like you could have done better here, or these are the things that don't really make sense, or like are we missing something in this place, like making sure that you're explaining things well. So I dictated that, and I got to tell you, it was the worst. It was literally the worst. Like listening to yourself fumble through a presentation that you're not ready to give, because you don't have to be ready to give this presentation at this point. You're a week out. You have time. Don't worry about that. But it was unbearable. I said so many times. I lost the point so many times. Like I would just like show a graph, and I'd be like, here's my data, and then I would go and into detail about each, individual data point of like how I got it. That's not the point. That's not the point. You want to show them what you did, the data you got, what does it mean? And if they agree, like, are the conclusions that you're coming to, are they reasonable conclusions to come to? I'm a couple of days now before my committee meeting. So my committee meeting is a Tuesday. So that Friday I have it all written out. I have everything that I want on the slides, and I'm just really clicking through my slides a million times, making sure that everything makes sense. And at this point, 5 days before, I still didn't really know what I was going into. So like, you don't get a ton of information from like your director, your coordinator. They don't like give you a detailed version of like what it's going to look like. So I'm like pretty nervous at this point. I would say be very open with your PI. Just tell them how you're feeling, because they can give you the best advice. They've done this how many times with how many students, and then them themselves. I was pretty nervous at this point, and I go to my PI and ask him for just like general feedback, like how's my presentation looking? Am I missing anything? Are there any papers do you think that I should read before this date? And the best advice that he gave me, and I did mention it before, and I really, really think it's important to remember that your committee is not there to grade you. They're there to help you. This is not an exam. And I really want you to remember that, because that's that feeling going into it. You really feel like you're going to be graded. You're going to be graded. Like you have to do it perfectly. And it's just not the fact. You don't have to do anything perfectly at this point. They're just there to help you. You've passed the exam. Take a breath. Be proud of your work. Like nobody knows your research better than you do. Maybe you're a PI, but like nobody knows what you've done in the past year better than you do. So be confident in that. Remember that. Remember that they're not there to trick you. They're not there to fail you. They're there to help you. And I think that's like a really important piece of information that you really got to hold on to throughout this whole process. I know it's really stressful. Recap, 2 months before, set the date. A month before, start your presentation. Send your PI outlines, send him questions, mine's a him, send them questions, and really just stay on top of how many days until your committee meeting so that you know what you're doing. And also, I highly recommend page by page, go through your notebook, see what you've done, take all of your data, and really like culminate it. Day of your committee meeting. I would say wake up early, whatever. Mine was at 2 p.m., so I woke up early. I had a great breakfast. Don't drink coffee right away as I'm drinking cold brew. I think this is really important. My advice is don't drink coffee hours and hours before your committee meeting, because this is the committee meeting takes a lot out of you. It's draining because you're standing up there, and I'll talk about like when you're actually in there, but it's draining. So don't drink your caffeine too early. Wait until maybe like 30 minutes before your presentation and just sip it throughout. So I literally have my cold brew. Maybe this doesn't apply to you. I'm just assuming that most graduate students are addicted to caffeine like I am. It has my name on it, although you can't really see it. But I had this with cold brew. I started drinking it at about a half an hour before my presentation, and I just sipped it throughout the meeting along with water. Also use water. Don't just use coffee. Drink a lot of water. You're going to be talking a lot. Wake up in the morning, get ready, do what makes you feel good in the morning. I went for a jog, I showered, I ate breakfast, I went to school. So I was at my lab at about noon. I went to the room that I had booked for my committee meeting, and I made sure the TV was working. I made sure that my computer can be hooked up to the TV. I got a pointer. So I had that all ready about 2 hours before my committee meeting even started. And then I just kind of clicked through my presentation and practiced my opening line. And I think that gives you a lot of confidence. If you know like the first thing that you're going to say, even if that's the only thing you like memorize, and I highly, highly suggest don't write a script, don't memorize anything, just know the point of each slide and work off of that. Like, what is the point? And stick with that. I'm going to go in and add more face makeup because this is like really washing me out, and I want you guys to like see it. About 2 hours before my committee meeting is about to start, I send out a reminder. I send out a link for my external committee member. So I send out a Zoom link for her, and I remind everybody that it's at 2 o'clock today. Excited to see you guys. And then it starts. So I kind of just want to tell you how I felt in that moment. It is time for your committee meeting. What is going to happen? And I'm just going to give you what happened to me. So that, that's like the only thing I can give you is my own experience. Everybody gets there. It's 2 o'clock. My chair tells me they're going to discuss with me outside of the room first. So they're going to send me outside of the room, and they're going to discuss for like a couple of minutes, 2 to 5 minutes. We're going to discuss with my PI the progress and kind of get an overview of what we're about to do and show. So she calls me out of the room. I go to a spot with like a little chair, and I'm really nervous. I'm someone with quite a bit of anxiety. I have a fear of failure, as a lot of people do, and I get really nervous. What I found most helpful is to just sit there. You're prepared at this point. You've been doing it for 2 months. You've been doing it for a year, and even longer than that. Nobody knows your project like you do, and they're not there to fail you. Remind yourself of that and do a breathing exercise. So I'm breathing, holding it in, letting it out, making sure my heart rate is kind of like decreasing. And I had someone tell me a cool piece of advice that actually worked. So it was the first time I was able to actually use this piece of advice, and it worked. You know that like jittery, nervous feeling you get when you're about to do a presentation? I'm sure we all know what I'm talking about. Remember what it's like. I don't know the last time you would have been at an amusement park, but you get that same jittery feeling, anxiety feeling when you're standing on line to a roller coaster, but this is something that you really want to do. So you're not just like jittery and nervous and scared to go on this like roller coaster, but you're also really excited. So I tap into that mindset. You can either be anxiety scared, or you could be anxiety excited. And I know that's like hard to change your mindset on, but I really tried. I was like, okay, I remember what it's like to be online at an amusement park, being scared, but also so excited about to be going on this ride. And I'm like, okay, I'm scared, but nobody knows my project like I do. They're only there to help me. So I'm also excited. This is excitement. And I would just keep breathing and telling myself, this bit of fear that I'm having, it's like excited nerves. And that it worked for me. So I would suggest giving that a try. Going with blush. blush. I really suggest giving that a try because it was such a game changer for me. Like, I don't remember who told me that, but man, did it work so freaking well. 2 to 5 minutes go by. I calm myself down. I'm telling myself, I'm excited. This is going to be a roller coaster. You know, it's going to be exhausting, but it's going to be great, and you're going to get a lot of good information. You just got to tell yourself that. And, you know, it ended up being true anyway. They call you back into the room. They tell you a little bit about what they discussed. And then my chair told me, I'm just going to keep putting on makeup since I'm like not done with the story, and I did this really quickly. I also wore mascara. I'm going to do that in a bit, but now I'm just going to like add to the eye makeup because we're playing. My committee chair member calls me back into the room. They tell me a little bit about what they discussed, and then my committee chair, tells me that this is not a presentation per se, that I made this presentation, you worked really hard on it, and it's like all of your sequential data, but it's not really like giving a presentation. Like, they already know your project. They really just want to go through the nitty-gritty. So what she told me was expect interruptions. Expect that you're not just going to give an hour-long presentation and then you're going to discuss questions at the end. Like, they're going to stop you midway through. They're going to stop you every slide, ask you really detailed questions, and you don't need to know all of the answers. You don't. Your PI is there to help you. So your PI is not there at your dissertation proposal exam. It's just your committee, and they're quizzing you. At this point, your PI is there, and he's there to help you. I'm saying he because obviously mine is a he. I mean they. They are there to help you. So my committee chair just warns me that it's not like a straightforward presentation. They're going to stop me when they have questions as we're going, and I can even ask them questions as I'm going. I decided that I'm still going to go into some background, even though they do know my project a bit, because in my background, I was showcasing some new data from a colleague, and I think it really puts into perspective some of the importance of my project, and it really gives a lot of insight. So I went through background, and then you just give your presentation. So don't worry about it too much, about like how you sound or what you're saying, the words you're using. Breathe, take your time. You don't have to rush. They're there for 2 hours, and if you don't get to the end of your presentation, that's fine. Honestly, I didn't even get to my aim 2. So I have 2 aims to my project, and we went extensively into my aim 1 because that is the project I work most heavily on. And then I didn't even get to give background on my aim 2. We got to that 2-hour mark, and they were like, this was good. We had a good conversation. They gave me a lot of feedback. I think we're just going to cut it off here, which is fine. So we go about 2 hours of them asking me a lot of questions, a lot of insights into my project. What do I feel that my data is saying? What other things I can do with my data? They give me a lot of advice on what they think will make a stronger argument. So, you know, that looks good and all, but we think that it would be more convincing if you did so-and-so experiments. During the 2 hours of your, presentation and conversation with your committee chair should be taking notes. Otherwise, you can record it. I didn't end up recording mine. I kind of wish I did because it went really well and they gave me a lot of really good advice, but my committee chair took really good notes. So I was able to look back at the notes to really figure out what they were telling me at the time. And of course, my PI remembers a lot of it too. Now I'm just having fun with makeup. I would have stopped way earlier for my my committee meeting. I don't think you need to wear a lot of makeup. I mean, do what you want, obviously, whatever makes you most comfortable. Like, if you're comfortable not wearing makeup and that's your day-to-day, I would say don't wear makeup. Like, there's no look to your committee meeting. There's no, like, air of, you have to look a certain way or presentability. You're not trying to get a job. Like, that's not the point. So that's it really for the actual committee meeting. After it was all said and done, I thanked everybody for coming and for giving me such good feedback. We talked a bit about next steps again, just to like reiterate. So once the committee meeting is over, you're the chair of your committee. is supposed to send a report to your director. At least that's how it works for mine. I'm assuming it's probably similar in a lot of different programs. There's a form that she had to fill out and send to my director by a certain time. And you could probably find deadlines online, but it's something that you really have to keep up with yourself, because nobody is in charge of your project anymore. Like, nobody is, at least in my experience, like, nobody is checking in. So I actually sent the form to my committee chair. Some of them will have it already and know where to get it, but I sent it to her just to make sure that she was doing the right one, because I don't want to put that on her. She's already doing so much for me. So I send her the form that she has to fill out and just remind her that by this time, it is required for her to send that in for me. And I thanked her so much. She fills out the form, writes, in the form, it's like strengths and weaknesses, what they've done, what was suggested, do you think they're on track for graduation, stuff like that. And I don't really even think the director looks at it too much. I think it's just for the record. And then she sends the final report to my director, my coordinator of my program, my PI, my committee, and me. Take a look at it. I read it. I take notes on all of the advice that was given to me and the different things that I can do to help my project. And you're done. Then you're done. So I was really nervous going into it, but coming out of it, I can say with my full chest that it's not so bad. It's there to help you. They're there to help you. And that's what I would really impress upon you. I think you should really remember is that they're just there to help you. They're not there to trick you. Wrap up, my other advice, drink water. Don't caffeinate too early. You really don't want to burn out. I'll tell you that much. You also don't want to be peeing the whole time. So I would, go pee right before. After it was all said and done, I took the form that had all of my suggestions and I wrote the notes into my lab notebook so that I had it on record. The advice that was given to me, because you're going to forget. You're going to forget what happened. Immediately after the committee meeting was over, I, took a deep breath and I was done. I left. You don't have to stay afterwards. I would suggest taking a break. It's a lot on your nerves. So now congratulate yourself. You got through a year of research, another year of being a PhD student, and that's hard, man. It's hard. I talk to a lot of people that get really overwhelmed, and I'm one of those people. I get really overwhelmed, and I'm a yes person. If someone asks me to do something, if I could do that properly, then I'll say yes. So I end up having a lot on my plate sometimes. So when you get to the end of these big accomplishments, make sure you take a break. Make sure that you're stopping, taking a breath, take a day off, go for a walk, get outside. Often when there's big meetings or big deadlines, you don't go out as much, you don't see the sun as much, you're not eating as well, or maybe you have some bad habits like staying up really late or drinking too much coffee. So I would really try to rebalance after your committee meeting and just take a big breath, go outside, play with your dogs, and just try to recoup in a way that feels personal to you. I really suggest taking a break afterwards because it feels like a lot. So this was my first annual committee meeting. You have to do it every single year until you graduate out. That is my advice for your first annual committee meeting while also doing my makeup. I know it wasn't that great to see. I am literally using my plant lights as a light right now, so they're very, very bright. But it's kind of all I have, and I wanted to get this video out. So leave questions in the comment section. Give it a like. I would love to give even more advice if anybody wants me to talk about the dissertation proposal, the qualifying exams, picking a lab. These are all things that I would love to talk about. I didn't get a lot of advice, step by step, and I just want to make sure that if people have questions, that there are answers out there, and I just want to be one of those people that you feel like that you can ask, and I'll take the time to answer, or even make a video if you want me to talk about something else. This is not as daunting as it feels, going into it. So hopefully next year going into my committee meeting, I won't have all of those anxieties and I know what's coming. So it'll be a little bit better. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.